morning and welcome to the Planet in the Word Week 5. And just a couple of weeks ago, you finished up the book of Job, and we didn't talk about it at that time. But now, as we're 2 weeks later, I would like to introduce something to you that is going to be happening in this week's reading. We'll get there in just a minute. But what we're really going to talk about this week is the legacy of Jethro and Job. Jethro being Moses' father-in-law and Job. Now, we're going to talk about why I would bring those two up together. But first, let's talk about the book of Job and its significance. First of all, the book of Job is thought to be the oldest written down book in the Old Testament, meaning it probably occurred sometime during the period of the patriarchs. So it was most likely written down before the story of the patriarchs or the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, were written down. And the second thing is, historically speaking, the Jews have always said that Moses wrote the book of Job down. He wrote down that story. So that brings to mind some questions as you have finished Job and are moving on. Where the questions are, or the interesting points that are worth relaying or understanding, come with the Septuagint version of the book of Job. So what is the Septuagint? Let's lay some foundation there. The Septuagint version is the Greek version of the Old Testament, most likely written around 300 BC. However, we know that it's based on older Hebrew documents. This is just the Greek translation of those Hebrew documents. Now, why is that significant? The Bible you hold in your hand is based on the Masoretic text. Now, the Masoretic text are documents that only date from 600 to 800 AD, meaning the Septuagint significantly predates the translation that our Bible is based on. That is just worth knowing. Now, once you know that piece of information and that the Septuagint, massive amounts have been found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls, there is a passage that is in the Septuagint at the end of Job we do not have in our Bibles based on the Masoretic text. But it's worth knowing. Because at the end of Job in the Septuagint, it tells us this piece of information. It gives us the genealogy of Job. But one of the things that it says is he wasn't just called Job. Our English word is Job. In Greek, he was Iov, or, as the passage states, he was also known as Yovav. Now, in Hebrew, it would have been with a yud. In Greek, it starts with an I. In English, it starts with a J. Jobab, Yovav, or Iovav, depending upon your language. That's what it says in our Bibles. Now, what's also interesting is, if we go forward to Judges 4, and let me get it specifically, 11, the Greek passage in the Septuagint tells us that Yovav his descendants were with the Kenites in the land of Israel. Uses that same name, I-O-V-A-V or I-O-B-A-B. Same name. If we go back to Judges 1:16 and tie it with that passage in 4, it says both times that Iovav, Jobab, was related to Moses. He was an in-law. They were Kenites. That is interesting. Twice he's mentioned as an in-law. Now, sometimes your Bible will translate it son-in-law, but really that term just means in-law, and it can apply to brother-in-law. It can reapply from a daughter to a father to a son. It's really just means related to by marriage. So why is this significant? This week, you're going to read Exodus 10:29. And in Exodus 10:29, Moses is having a conversation with Hobab and his father-in-law, known by two names, Jethro and Reuel. He's known by both those names in different places. Moses is having a conversation with Hobab and Jethro or Reuel. Interestingly, in that first Judges passage we read in Judges 4, in that passage in your Bible, it probably says the name Hobab. Your Bible ties Hobab in Judges 4 to the Hobab having a conversation with Moses and Jethro at this location. And our Septuagint says that is Eovav, the same gentleman who wrote the book of Job, or who the book of Job is about. So what am I suggesting? I am suggesting that the reason Moses is credited with writing the book of Job is that Job was telling Moses his own story. Job wrote it down, or Job gave it to Moses and Moses wrote it down. In addition, Job may have been a family relation to Moses by marriage. But what do we know for sure? What we know for sure is that after this Exodus moment, the Kenites, the in-laws of Moses, had relationship with the Israelites. They went into the promised land. Now, before that, in Numbers 24, Balaam is hired to curse the Israelites by the kings of the region, including the Midianites. Remember, Jethro came out of Midian. He was a priest of Yahweh in the land of Midian. He would have been known to these men. So Balaam is hired to curse them, but Balaam has very specific prophecy over the Kenites. This is what it says. It says, your dwelling place is enduring, and your nest sets in the cliffs. Meaning the Kenites were not going to be taken out, and they were probably going to be elevated to a place of safety. The Kenites are mentioned again. In fact, it is Jael, the Kenite, who is responsible for putting the tent peg through Barak's head and saving all of Israel. And the last time we see the Kenites, we have Saul. Saul has been told by Samuel that he is to take care of the Amalekite problem. And so Saul goes to the Kenites and he says, look, I need you to separate yourselves from the Amalekites because I'm about ready to come in and take them out. And you have been a friend to Israel. And I do not want to destroy you along with them. That would have been significant if this is the family of Moses and it's the family of Eov. These are people who would have been precious to the Israelites. Hope you find this interesting. It's worth looking at this story, both in the Septuagint, if you have a copy, and then comparing these references in your Masoretic text-based Bible. You'll find that those passages correlate very well. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good week. Bye-bye.